The emergency alarm screamed through the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Thora rushed to the main display, her forearms trembling. The message playing across the screen made her blood run cold. This is the Velthari Empire. We are dying. Our worlds burn. Our people flee. The Devourers have broken through our final defense line. We have perhaps 3 months before our civilization ends. We beg the Council for military intervention. Thora had never heard the proud Velthari beg for anything. They were warriors, conquerors who had built an empire spanning 200 star systems. If they were begging, the situation was worse than anyone imagined. The council chamber filled quickly. Representatives from 40 species gathered, their faces showing fear and concern. Everyone knew about the Devourers. The massive biomechanical monsters had appeared 5 years ago at the edge of the galaxy. They consumed everything. Planets, stations, ships, even stars. Nothing stopped them. The Veltharii have the 3rd strongest military in the galaxy, Council Leader Vex said, his voice heavy. If they cannot stop the Devourers, what hope do we have? The room fell silent. Every species had sent forces to help fight the Devourers. Every battle had ended in defeat. The enemy learned too quickly, adapted too fast. Standard galactic military tactics failed against them. Perhaps we should evacuate the Veltharii and abandon those sectors, someone suggested. And when the Devourers finish consuming Veltharii space? Thora challenged. Where do we run next? They will not stop. We must find a way to fight them. There is no way, Vex said bitterly. We have tried everything. Our best tactical minds have failed. Our most advanced weapons barely scratch them. The Devourers are unstoppable. Thora's mind raced. There had to be something they had not tried. Some resource they had not used. Then, an idea struck her. Crazy and desperate. What about the humans? She asked. The chamber erupted in laughter and angry chittering. Humans. The youngest species in the council. Barely 200 years since first contact. They had been amusing at first with their primitive chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Now they had proper jump drives and energy weapons. But their military remained a mystery. Humans shared almost nothing about their combat capabilities. The humans? Vex scoffed. They have refused every request to join our combined military forces. They send trade ships and diplomats, but keep their warships in their own territory. What makes you think they would help now? Because the Devourers will eventually reach human space too, Thora argued. And because humans are different from us. They think differently. Perhaps they see solutions we cannot. Humans are primitive, another ambassador said with contempt. Their vessels are barely adequate. They use crude kinetic weapons alongside energy systems. Some of their ships still use explosive propellants. They are centuries behind us technologically, yet they survived to reach space. Thora countered. Their world was harsh. They fought countless wars. Perhaps that struggle taught them things we never learned. The debate raged for hours. Finally, with the Velthari Empire dying and no other options available, the council voted. The margin was narrow, but the decision was made. They would ask humanity for help. The message was sent to Earth's unified command. Thora expected a long wait for the reply. Humans were cautious. Their decision-making processes slow and careful. She was surprised when the response came within 6 hours. Admiral Minjun Park appeared on the screen. He was older, his black hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He wore a simple dark blue uniform with minimal decoration. Ambassador Thora, Park said, his voice calm. We have reviewed your request and the data on the Devourers. Earth's government has made a decision. Thora felt hope rise in her chest. You will send military aid? We will. Park confirmed. However, we will not be sending our primary fleet. The hope turned to confusion. I do not understand. Park's expression became serious. The Devourers have defeated every modern galactic military force. They learn from each battle, adapt to each strategy. So we will not fight them with modern tactics. We will send our museum fleet. Museum fleet, Thora repeated, certain she had misunderstood the translation. Correct. We are restoring and reactivating warships from human history, vessels that won the greatest battles of our past. They will be modified for space travel and life support. But their core designs and weapon systems will remain authentic to their original purpose. Thora could not believe what she was hearing. You are sending ancient vessels? Museum pieces? To fight an enemy that has destroyed our best modern warships? Yes, Park said simply. These ships represent humanity's greatest tactical victories, battles where commanders faced impossible odds and won through creativity, courage, and understanding of fundamental warfare principles. The Devourers are programmed to counter advanced technology and modern tactics. They have no experience with the methods humanity used for thousands of years before spaceflight. This is insane, Thora whispered. Perhaps, Park acknowledged. But everything else has failed. Sometimes, the answer is not more advanced technology, but different thinking. These ships will arrive in Veltharii space within 2 weeks. Captain Lee Sujin will command the flagship. She is one of our finest tactical minds and a student of ancient warfare. The transmission ended. Thora sat in stunned silence. She had asked humanity for help. Thora, and they were sending antiques. Museum ships. When she reported this to the council, the reaction was explosive. Humans mock us, Vex shouted. They insult the Velthari. This is their idea of assistance. Or perhaps, Thora said slowly, they know something we do not. Humans survived 10,000 years of warfare on a single planet. They built these ships to fight enemies with superior numbers or technology. Maybe there is wisdom in their choice. Or maybe they are fools, another ambassador muttered. 2 weeks later, the human museum fleet arrived at the edge of Veltharii space. When the council observers saw the vessels, shock and anger spread through their ranks. The ships looked primitive, ancient, some appearing to be made of metal and wood. They bore names like Missouri, Victory, Yamato, and others that meant nothing to galactic observers. At the center of the formation sailed a unique vessel covered in protective plating, with what appeared to be a dragon head at the bow. This was the flagship, a modernized version of an ancient Korean turtle ship. Captain Lee Soo-jin's calm voice came across all channels. This is the human museum fleet. We have come to help. Humanity remembers how to fight impossible battles. Now the galaxy will remember too. Captain Lee Soo-jin stood on the bridge of her turtle ship, studying the holographic display of the Veltharii system. Around her, the museum fleet held formation with practiced precision. Each vessel was a piece of human history, brought back to life for one more battle. Captain, we are receiving multiple hails from council observers, her communications officer reported. They sound angry. Put them through, Lee said calmly. The main screen filled with Ambassador Thora's face. Behind her, several other council members looked furious. Captain Lee, what is the meaning of this? Thora demanded. These vessels are primitives. Relics. How dare humanity send such insulting aid? Lee had expected this reaction. Ambassador, these vessels were chosen very carefully. Each one represents a decisive victory in human warfare. The USS Missouri witnessed the end of our last global war. HMS Victory broke the power of an empire. The Yamato represents engineering excellence. And my ship is modeled after vessels that defeated invasion forces 10 times their size. Ancient history means nothing against the Devourers, a Veltharii general interrupted, his face twisted with contempt. We need modern warships with advanced weapons, not museum pieces that belong in displays. With respect, General, your modern warships have failed, Lee replied evenly. Every species in the galaxy developed similar military technology and tactics. You all think alike because you all evolved similarly. The Devourers have adapted to counter everything you know, but they have never faced humanity's way of war. Your way of war? The general scoffed. You mean primitive chemical weapons and metal projectiles? We abandoned such crude methods thousands of years ago. And in doing so, you forgot the lessons those weapons taught, Lee said. Humanity fought wars for 10,000 years before we reached space. We learned things you never needed to learn. We developed tactics for situations you never faced. Enough of this, Vex interrupted. The Devourers will arrive in this system within 40 hours. Position your vessels with our defense fleet and follow standard engagement protocols. Negative, Lee said firmly. The museum fleet will operate independently. We have our own tactical plan. Sensteberd. Around to. Sensteberd. Lee said Fren. The council members looked shocked. No species had ever refused to integrate with the combined fleet during a crisis. This is unacceptable, Vex sputtered. You must coordinate with our forces. Our forces will coordinate with each other, Lee replied. We will also ensure civilian evacuation routes remain open and protect colony worlds. But we will not use your tactics. They do not work. Watch what we do, and perhaps you will learn something new. She cut the transmission before they could argue further. Around the bridge, her crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for months on these ancient vessels, studying the original battles these ships had fought. Learning from commanders who had been dead for centuries. All ships report ready, her tactical officer said. Museum fleet is at full operational status. Lee pulled up the system map. The Velthari had 7 inhabited worlds and dozens of stations. The Devourers would target the most populated areas first, as they always did. Standard defensive doctrine said to meet them in open space, using superior range and mobility. We will not do what they expect, Lee said. Send out new positioning orders. Protocol Hansen Island. Her officers exchanged knowing looks. Hansan Island had been one of Admiral Yi Sun Sin's greatest victories. Fought in 1592 against a Japanese invasion force, Yi had lured a larger enemy fleet into narrow straits where their numbers meant nothing, then destroyed them with superior tactics. The asteroid field near the 4th planet, her navigation officer said, understanding immediately. Exactly. The Devourers will see our small fleet and attack with overwhelming force, expecting easy victory. We will draw them into the field, where their numerical advantage is negated. Then we show them how humans fought for centuries when enemies had more ships, better weapons, or superior technology. The museum fleet moved into position over the next 30 hours. The USS Missouri, a massive battleship from the 20th century, took the center position. On either flank, the turtle ships formed defensive screens. HMS Victory and other line of battleships arranged themselves in precise formations that had not been seen in warfare for hundreds of years. Other human vessels spread throughout the system. The carrier ships held fighters based on World War II designs, modified for space combat, but maintaining their original tactical purpose. Submarines, yes, submarines adapted for space, waited in the shadows of large asteroids. Destroyers ran patrol patterns that dated back to Earth's ancient naval warfare. Council observers are questioning our formation, communications reported. They say we are vulnerable to flanking attacks. They see vulnerability where we see opportunity, Lee replied. Admiral Yi taught us that appearing weak can be the strongest position. 36 hours after the museum fleet arrived, alarms sounded throughout the system. The Devourers had entered Velthari space. Lee watched the sensors as the enemy force appeared. 200 massive biomechanical constructs, each one the size of a small moon. They moved with horrible purpose toward the inhabited worlds. The Council's defense fleet engaged them at extreme range, following their standard protocols. The Council fleet is already falling back, her tactical officer reported. The Devourers are absorbing their fire and adapting their shields. As expected, Lee said. All ships, hold position. Wait for them to commit. The Devourers pushed through the Council's defense line easily. Their sensors detected the human museum fleet near the fourth planet. Lee could almost feel the enemy's calculations running. A small force of primitive vessels in a vulnerable position. Easy targets to destroy quickly. The Devourers changed course, moving directly toward the museum fleet with frightening speed. They are taking the bait, Lee's tactical officer said with satisfaction. All ships, prepare for engagement. Remember your training. Remember the battles these ships fought centuries ago. Today we teach the galaxy that old wisdom is still wisdom. Today, we prove that humanity's way of war is like nothing they have ever seen. The Devourers entered the asteroid field, their formations tight and aggressive. They expected panic and retreat from the humans. Instead, the museum fleet held position with absolute calm. Lee Sujin thought of Admiral Yi Sun-sin, who had faced impossible odds with courage and brilliant tactics. She thought of all the human commanders throughout history who had won when victory seemed impossible. All ships, she said clearly. Open fire. Show them what legends can do. The museum fleet erupted with weapons fire that the galaxy had not seen in centuries. The battle for Velthari had begun, and humanity was about to remind the universe why humans had fought for 10,000 years before reaching the stars. The first Devourer died in a way that shocked every observer watching the battle. The USS Missouri, a battleship from humanity's 20th century, unleashed its main guns in a devastating broadside. 9 massive shells, each weighing as much as a small spacecraft, struck the Devourer's hull in perfect synchronization. The biomechanical monster's shields had been designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb missile impacts. They had adapted to every advanced weapon the galaxy could produce, but they had never encountered simple kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The shells punched through the Devourer's shields like they did not exist. The creature shuddered, its hull rupturing in multiple places. Before it could adapt or regenerate, HMS Victory and 3 other line of battleships opened fire with their own broadsides. The concentrated firepower tore the Devourer apart. First kill confirmed, Lee's tactical officer reported, his voice filled with satisfaction. Enemy showing confusion in their formation. None. Lee watched the Devourers react. They were slowing down, reassessing. They had expected easy prey, and found something completely different. The enemy had never encountered tactics from humanity's age of sail, when naval warfare meant bringing maximum firepower to bear at close range in coordinated volleys. Continue Protocol Hansan Island, Lee ordered. Turtle ships, advance to secondary positions. Draw them deeper. The turtle ships, armored vessels with dragonhead bows, moved forward provocatively. The Devourers, programmed to destroy anything that showed aggression, took the bait. 50 of them surged forward, trying to surround the smaller human vessels. Now, Lee said calmly. The turtle ships scattered in what appeared to be panic. The Devourers rushed forward to pursue, entering the densest part of the asteroid field. That was when the real trap closed. From concealed positions among the asteroids, human submarines launched torpedoes. Not the advanced seeking missiles the galaxy used, but simple torpedoes running on calculated intercept courses. The Devourer's defensive systems, designed for sophisticated guidance systems, barely reacted to the primitive weapons. The torpedoes struck home. Explosions rippled through the Devourer formation. At the same moment, the turtle ships reversed course and opened fire with their close-range cannons. The protected design of the turtle ships allowed them to absorb enemy fire while unleashing devastating attacks. Just like Admiral Yi, Lee's first officer said with admiration. Lure them in, scatter to draw them forward, then strike from protected positions. The Devourers adapted quickly, as they always did. Their shields began adjusting to kinetic weapons. But the museum fleet was already changing tactics. World War II-era fighters launched from the carrier ships, swarming the Devourers in attack patterns that were hundreds of years old. The small craft moved with wild unpredictability, using maneuvers designed for atmospheric combat. Barrel rolls, split S-turns, scissors maneuvers. The Devourer's targeting systems, built to track spacecraft moving in efficient vectors, struggled to predict the seemingly random movements. Council fleet is requesting permission to join the engagement, communications reported. Tell them to hold position and watch, Lee replied. They need to see the full demonstration. The USS Missouri advanced in a maneuver called Crossing the T, a classic naval tactic where a ship positions itself perpendicular to an enemy formation. This allows all guns to fire, while the enemy can only use forward weapons. In space combat, such positioning was considered obsolete because ships could rotate and fire in any direction. But the Missouri did not cross the T with a normal enemy. It crossed the T with Devourers that were focused on the fighter swarms. The battleship unleashed a full broadside into enemies that had their attention elsewhere. 3 more Devourers fell before they could react. Yamato, execute your run, Lee ordered. The legendary Japanese battleship, rebuilt with its massive main guns intact, charged directly at the largest cluster of Devourers. It was a suicide, run by any modern tactical assessment. But the Yamato was not following modern tactics. It was following the spirit of its final historical mission, where it had sailed to certain death with honor. Except this time, the mission would not be suicide. The Yamato fired its guns continuously as it advanced, each shell precisely targeted. The Devourers concentrated their fire on this single, bold ship, but the Yamato's engineers had reinforced its armor, using modern materials while keeping the original design. It absorbed damage that would destroy a modern warship. Just as the Devourers closed in for the kill, the Yamato's real purpose became clear. It had drawn the enemy into a tight formation. Human destroyers, running silent until this moment, emerged from behind asteroids and unleashed depth charges. Another ancient weapon, designed to sink submarines by creating massive pressure waves. In space, the depth charges created kinetic shock waves through the asteroid debris. The tightly packed Devourers found themselves battered by countless impacts from all directions. Their shields failed under the sustained physical battering. The Yamato reversed course, its job complete, having survived the impossible. Brilliant, Ambassador Thora whispered from the Council observation ship. Around her, military commanders from a dozen species watched in amazement. They are using primitive weapons that the Devourers have no adaptation protocols for, a Veltharii general said slowly. But it is more than that. These tactics, these maneuvers, they follow no modern combat doctrine. Because they are not modern, Thora replied. They are ancient, perfected over thousands of years of human warfare. The Devourers learned to counter advanced tactics, but they have no programming for methods abandoned centuries ago. On the human flagship, Lee studied the tactical situation. The Devourers were regrouping, adapting to the kinetic weapons. Time for another change. Signal all ships. Execute Nelson's touch. Her officers grinned. Nelson's touch was Admiral Horatio Nelson's famous tactical plan at Trafalgar in 1805. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, Nelson had split his fleet into 2 columns and charged directly at the enemy's line, breaking it and creating chaos. The museum fleet reformed into 2 columns, led by HMS Victory and the Missouri. They charged directly at the Devourer formation at maximum speed. The enemy, seeing ships rushing towards certain destruction, focused all fire on these apparent suicide runs. But the columns did not try to destroy the Devourers. They aimed for the gaps between them. The human ships punched through the enemy formation, their broadsides firing continuously as they passed. The Devourers found themselves caught between the 2 columns, unable to focus fire, their formation broken. With the enemy in chaos, the turtle ships struck. They swept through the confused Devourers like blades, their protected designs allowing aggressive close combat. The submarines, repositioned during the chaos, unleashed another wave of torpedoes. The fighters regrouped and attacked in coordinated strikes. Enemy formation is collapsing, Tactical reported. They are attempting to retreat. 2. Lee felt a surge of triumph. The Devourers had never retreated. Never. But they had never faced opponents who fought with 10,000 years of accumulated tactical knowledge. All ships, pursue. Do not let them escape to warn others about our methods. The museum fleet, vessels that had been mocked as primitive relics, chased down and destroyed the Devourers systematically. Each human ship fought with the spirit of its original crew, using tactics that had won impossible victories centuries ago. When the last Devourer fell, the battlefield fell silent. The human museum fleet had defeated a force 3 times its size without losing a single vessel. The council observers could barely comprehend what they had witnessed. Captain Lee Soo-jin allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had just taught the galaxy a lesson about the value of history. The celebration was brief. Even as the last Devourer fell, new alarms sounded across the Veltharii system. Captain, sensors are detecting another wave, the tactical officer announced, his voice tight. 300 Devourers, approaching from multiple vectors. They are targeting the civilian colony on the 3rd planet. Lee's heart sank. The museum fleet had fought brilliantly, but they had taken damage. Several ships needed repairs. Ammunition was running low on the kinetic weapons. And now they faced a force even larger than before. How long until they reach the colony? She asked. 90 minutes. The evacuation transports will not finish loading civilians in time. Lee looked at the tactical display. The colony held 2 million Veltharii civilians, including young and elderly. If the Devourers reached the surface, everyone would die. All ships. Report status, she commanded. The reports came in quickly. The Missouri had sustained damage to 2 of its main gun turrets. The Yamato's armor was breached in 3 places. Several turtle ships were running on backup power, but every ship remained operational. Every crew stood ready. Admiral Park is requesting a status report, communications said. Lee connected to Earth Command. Admiral Minjun Park's face appeared, his expression grave. Captain Lee, we are seeing the new wave on long-range sensors. You cannot engage that many enemies with damaged ships. We must, Admiral. The civilians cannot evacuate. In time. V. Park was quiet for a moment. I am ordering the USS Arizona to your position. She is the closest reinforcement. Lee felt her chest tighten. The Arizona was another museum fleet vessel, but it carried special significance. The original Arizona had been destroyed at Pearl Harbor in 1941, taking most of its crew with it. The ship had become a memorial, a reminder of sacrifice. To send it into another desperate battle felt like tempting fate. Understood, Admiral. We will hold until Arizona arrives. Captain, Park said softly. Come home. All of you. Humanity will honor your sacrifice, whatever happens. With respect, Admiral, we did not come here to be honored. We came here to fight, just like the crews who served on these ships centuries ago. The transmission ended. Lee turned to her crew. And we must protect 2 million civilians who cannot defend themselves. These are impossible odds. She paused, seeing the determination on every face. But humanity built its reputation on impossible odds. Every ship in our fleet won battles they should have lost. Today, we honor those victories by winning another. Sound general quarters. All ships prepare for engagement. For Earth. For the Veltharii. For everyone who cannot fight. The museum fleet moved to intercept the Devourers. The turtle ships formed the front line, their heavy armor making them the best choice to absorb the initial assault. Behind them, the battleships prepared their remaining ammunition for maximum impact. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo, Admiral Park's daughter, commanded one of the turtle ships. She studied the approaching enemy force with a tactical mind sharpened by years of studying her ancestor, Admiral Yi Sun-sin. Her ship was named Myeongyang, after Yi's greatest victory, where he defeated 333 enemy ships with only 13 vessels. We face 300 today, she told her crew. Admiral Yi faced worse odds and won. We will too. Admiral. The Devourers struck with overwhelming force. They had learned from the previous battle. Their formations were looser, their targeting more random. They concentrated fire on single ships, trying to destroy the humans through focused attacks. The turtle ships held the line with desperate courage. Their shields failed quickly under the sustained bombardment. Their hulls, protected by modern armor over ancient designs, absorbed damage that would destroy lesser vessels. But even they had limits. Myungyang's shields are down, Tactical reported. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Tell Lieutenant Park to fall back, Lee ordered. She is refusing, Captain. She says her position protects the civilian transports. Lee watched the tactical display helplessly. Jiwoo's ship was taking terrible damage. But she was right. If Myungyang retreated, the Devourers would have a clear path to the evacuation ships. The Missouri and Yamato pushed forward, their remaining guns firing continuously. HMS Victory led the line of battleships in a classic defensive formation, each ship supporting the others. But there were simply too many enemies. USS Arizona, entering the system, sensors announced. The newest addition to the museum fleet arrived at maximum speed. Arizona had been restored with special care, her crew trained with particular intensity. Everyone who served on her knew the ship's history, knew what the original crew had sacrificed. The Arizona's captain, Commander Sarah Chen, opened a channel to all ships. Museum fleet, this is Arizona. We did not come here to watch. We came here to finish what our predecessors started. For those who fell, for those who could not fight back, we fight now. The Arizona charged directly into the thickest part of the Devourer formation. Her guns blazed with controlled fury. She positioned herself between the enemy and the damaged Myungyang, absorbing fire meant for Jiwoo's crippled ship. Arizona is taking heavy damage, Tactical reported, voice shaking. Multiple hull breaches. She is venting atmosphere. Come on, Arizona, Lee whispered. Fall back. You have done enough. But the Arizona did not retreat. Commander Chen's voice came across all channels one last time. All museum fleet ships, this is Arizona. We are executing Protocol Pearl Harbor. Full evacuation of civilian areas is complete. We have our victory. Tell Earth that Arizona honored her name. Lee understood immediately. Protocol Pearl Harbor meant the Arizona would sacrifice itself to ensure others survived. Just as the original Arizona had died protecting its harbor, this Arizona would die protecting the evacuation. The battleship turned directly toward the largest concentration of Devourers. Her remaining weapons fired until the barrels melted. She rammed the first Devourer at full speed, her hull tearing apart but taking the enemy with her. The explosion was massive, destroying 10 more Devourers and scattering the rest. The sacrifice gave the museum fleet the opening they needed. The turtle ships rallied, pushing through the gap Arizona had created. The other battleships concentrated their fire. The fighters swarmed the confused enemies. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo, her ship barely functional, led a desperate boarding action. Her crew used tactics from ancient Korean naval combat, boarding enemy vessels with cutting tools and explosives. They fought through Devourer interiors like Marines from centuries past, destroying command nodes with direct action. The battle raged for 3 more hours. When it finally ended, the museum fleet was battered but victorious. The civilian transports had escaped. The colony was safe, but the Arizona was gone, and her crew with her. Captain Lee stood on her damaged bridge, exhausted and heartbroken. They had won. The cost had been terrible, but they had won. Just like all the impossible victories humanity had earned throughout its history, this one would be remembered. The museum fleet returned to Earth 3 weeks after the Battle of Veltharii. The ships that had departed as symbols of history now carried the weight of new history. Every hull bore fresh scars alongside the old. Every crew member had a story that would be told for generations. Captain Lee Soo-jin stood on the bridge of her turtle ship as Earth came into view. The planet looked beautiful and peaceful, unaware of how close the Devourer threat had come to reaching human space. Around her flagship, the surviving vessels of the museum fleet held formation one last time. "Captain, Earth Command is hailing us," communications reported. "Admiral Park requests permission to address the fleet. Put him through to all ships." Admiral Minjun Park's weathered face filled the screen. His eyes were red, and Lee realized he had been crying. She understood why. His daughter, Ji-woo, had survived. But barely. And the Arizona, the ship he had personally ordered into battle, was gone. "Museum fleet," Park said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were mocked when you departed. Aliens laughed at your ships, called them primitive and useless. Today, the entire galaxy knows the truth. You faced impossible odds and won. You saved millions of lives. You proved that humanity's greatest weapons are not our newest technologies, but our oldest wisdom." He paused, gathering himself. Commander Sarah Chen and the crew of the USS Arizona gave their lives so others could live. They honored the sacrifice of the original Arizona and created a new legend that will never be forgotten. When we restore the Arizona again, it will carry the names of both crews, both sacrifices, both victories. Lee felt tears on her own cheeks. Around the bridge, her crew stood at attention, honoring their fallen comrades. "Museum fleet, you are cleared for landing. Welcome home. Earth is proud of you." The ships descended through the atmosphere in staggered formation. Millions of people had gathered at the landing sites to watch. News services from across Earth and dozens of alien worlds broadcast the arrival. At the main spaceport, Lee emerged from her turtle ship to find a massive crowd waiting. But something was different. The people were silent, respectful. This was not a celebration, but a remembrance. Admiral Park waited at the bottom of the ramp. He saluted formally, and Lee returned it. Then the old admiral did something unexpected. He bowed deeply, a traditional Korean gesture of profound respect. "Thank you," he said simply, "for bringing my daughter home, for honoring the ships, for showing the galaxy what humanity truly is." "Your daughter is a hero," Lee replied. "She fought like Admiral Yi himself. The Veltharai owe their civilization to her courage, and the courage of Lieutenant Park's boarding team, Osamtang." "And Commander Chen?" Park asked quietly. "She died as she lived, protecting others. The Arizona's sacrifice saved 2 million civilians and turned the battle. Without her, we would have failed." Park nodded slowly. "Then, we will make sure both her sacrifice and her ship are never forgotten. Come, the memorial service is prepared." The ceremony was held at the museum fleet's main base. All the ships were present, even those still undergoing repairs. The Arizona's anchor, recovered from the debris field, had been brought to Earth and placed at the center of a new memorial. Representatives from the Galactic Council attended, including Ambassador Thora and the Veltharii leaders. They stood quietly among the humans, finally understanding the significance of these ancient vessels. Captain Lee addressed the gathering. "These ships were built centuries ago by people who never imagined their creations would fight among the stars. But they built them with the same purpose that guided us in battle, to protect the innocent, to stand against overwhelming odds, to prove that courage and wisdom can defeat any enemy." She gestured to the assembled fleet. The USS Missouri, HMS Victory, the Yamato, the Turtle ships, and all the others in our fleet were not chosen because they were the most advanced vessels. They were chosen because they represented humanity's greatest tactical victories, battles where commanders faced impossible situations and won through creativity, courage, and refusal to surrender. The Arizona proved this one more time. Commander Chen and her crew knew they faced certain death. They went anyway, because that is what heroes do. That is what humanity does when others need protection. Ambassador Thora stepped forward to speak. "I came to Earth to apologize," she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. The Council mocked your museum fleet. We called these ships primitive, called humanity foolish. We were wrong. You taught us that progress is not about abandoning the past but learning from it. A Veltharii general, the same one who had insulted the museum fleet before the battle, approached. He removed his rank insignia and placed them at the Arizona's memorial. I said your ships belonged in museums, he said quietly. I was right, but not in the way I thought. They belong in museums as reminders of what true warriors accomplish, as proof that honor and courage transcend time and technology. The Veltharii Empire owes its existence to these legendary vessels and their legendary crews. Over the following months, the impact of the museum fleet's victory spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council formally requested that human military advisors train their forces in historical tactics. Universities across dozens of worlds began studying Earth's military history, amazed by the tactical innovations humanity had developed. The ships themselves were restored to full operational status. The Arizona was rebuilt with a dual memorial, honoring both the Pearl Harbor crew and the Battle of Veltharii crew. Volunteers flooded the recruitment offices, all wanting to serve on the legendary vessels. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo recovered from her injuries and was promoted to captain of her own turtle ship. She began teaching courses on Admiral Yi Sun-sin's tactics to alien military commanders who could barely pronounce his name but desperately wanted to learn his methods. Captain Lee Soo-jing was offered promotion to admiral and command of Earth's modern fleet. She declined. Her place was with the museum fleet, with the ships that had proven that humanity's past was its greatest strength. On the first anniversary of the Battle of Veltharii, representatives from 40 species came to Earth for a memorial ceremony. They walked through museums that displayed thousands of years of human warfare, finally understanding what they were seeing. These were not just weapons and ships. They were lessons. Victories earned through blood and sacrifice that had created tactical knowledge unlike anything else in the galaxy. The museum fleet remained on active duty, ready to deploy if the Devourers or any other threat emerged. But more importantly, they became teachers. Each ship hosted officers from other species, showing them how humans had fought for millennia before reaching space. Admiral Park stood with Captain Lee, watching students from a dozen species touring the turtle ships. They finally understand, Park said. Humanity's strength is not that we are better or more advanced. Our strength is that we remember. We honor our past and carry its lessons forward. And we prove that sometimes the oldest answers are still the best answers, Lee added. The galaxy spent centuries developing advanced technology. They forgot that the fundamentals of warfare, strategy, courage, and sacrifice do not change. In orbit above Earth, the museum fleet held position, their hulls bearing scars from battles across centuries and across the stars. The USS Missouri, HMS Victory, the Yamato, and the restored Arizona, each one a legend twice over. Students and tourists visited the ships daily, learning about human history and the battles that had saved the galaxy. They saw the names of crews who had died centuries ago, and names of those who had died in space. They were all heroes, all legends. And on quiet nights, when the ships were empty except for skeleton crews, some swore they could feel the presence of everyone who had ever served on these vessels. Sailors from the Age of Sail, soldiers from global wars, and spacers who had fought biomechanical monsters among the stars. The museum fleet had proven that legends never die. They just wait for the moment when the galaxy needs them again. And humanity would always be ready, carrying the wisdom of 10,000 years of warfare into whatever future awaited among the stars.